What I am about to share with you has been the greatest discovery of my career. Not only my career, but it has impacted my personal life. It's impacted my friendships, my marriage, how I understand myself. And I wish I had had this tool when I began my leadership journey over 10 years ago. But I have it now, and I'm so excited to share it with you today. So let's talk about the working genius. Hey there, leaders. Welcome to the Culture Keepers podcast. I'm Kara List, your leadership coach. And here on the podcast, we discuss topics that empower leaders like you to cultivate thriving workplace cultures where your people are happy, they are high performing, they are connected to the work, connected to the mission, they feel like they belong. It's so good. So we're talking all those things here on the Culture Keepers podcast. And I'm so glad you're here, especially today, because we're talking about something that I love. I nerd out about it. It is Pat Lencioni and the Table Group's model, The Working Genius. And maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. We're going to lay out what it means today and help you start to think about what your working genius is and how it impacts your life and your work. And some of you are visual learners. And so I have a PDF for you. It is really just a working genius cheat sheet that goes through all of the things I'm going to talk about today in some visual form, some graphics. And it's a download for free. So go ahead to www.heycaralist.com/genius or go to the link in the show notes and you can get that document and you can see it all in front of you as you listen or after to go back and reference. So what is the working genius? Why does it exist? Well, Pat Lencioni, who created the model, was really struggling with why he worked the way that he worked. He'd have people that would come up to him and say, like, why are you like this? Like, why do you do this all the time? And he didn't know. And in his book, The Working Genius, The Six Working Geniuses, he goes through kind of his career history and his dissatisfaction in roles and how he went from one position to the next, to the next, to the next, and how he eventually came to discover that the reason that was happening was because he did not understand his working genius and he wasn't working in his working genius. So what is it? What is your working genius? And what's the model? So the model says that every process, every job consists of 6 different steps. So to get any kind of work done, it involves 6 activities. And 2 of those can be considered your working genius, the thing that brings you the most energy, the thing you show up most naturally with. 2 of them are your working competencies, which mean that there are things you can do, like they give you a little bit of energy, but very quickly they will turn into things that drain you. And then your 2 working frustrations are the things that just totally drain you. When you have to do them, you just get stopped. They're like roadblocks, hurdles in your productivity. We like to think of it like a cup of coffee. So your working geniuses are like a thermos of hot coffee. So it's just super hot and it stays hot. Your competencies are like a paper cup without a lid. So it's going to be hot when you pour it in, but it's going to get cold relatively quickly. And your frustrations are like a cup with a hole in the bottom. You pour the coffee in and it goes right out the bottom, drains you. So the Table Group company developed an assessment that helps you identify what your working geniuses, competencies, or frustrations are. And real quick, I want to talk about why this test is different. And I'm not going to say better because there are a lot of really good personality assessments out there, ones that I've done and enjoyed, but this is not a personality assessment. It is primarily a productivity assessment. So it answers the question, why do I work the way that I work? And why that makes it different is because it's immediately applicable. You can take something from it and apply it to your work, and it's simple. There are 6 things involved, and that is it. So you can take what you learn and apply it to your work immediately. It's simple, and I love it. So what are the 6 working geniuses? Well, they kind of run in a workflow. So as I talk about them, you're going to see them kind of in process with one another. So the first is wonder. And someone with the genius of wonder kind of stops the progress of the work. Like things are moving and they can stop it and say, whoa, let's consider what our opportunities here are, or what are we not thinking about? Or could we be doing this better? They like to pause and they like to reflect on what is happening and wonder what the next possibilities are. They're really good at identifying the need for improvement or change in what's happening, and it just prepares the ground for what's next. And what's next is invention. So people with the working genius of invention kind of take the question and respond with a solution, an option for a solution. So they might say, that's a great question. Here is an idea. So it answers the question of wonder. And these people are really great at creating ideas from scratch. But here's the thing. Not all people with the genius of invention have the next genius, which is discernment. And discernment has the ability to look at the invention and say, is that the right choice? Have we thought about this? Let me help you make it better. They have that gut feeling, that intuition about the idea. They have an innate ability to assess its merit or its workability. And so often in the process, discernment and invention will go kind of back and forth until the right decision, the choice that has been discerned, emerges. And then it gets passed to the galvanizer. And someone with the genius of galvanizing says, this is awesome. Let's do it. I'm going to mobilize the troops. You guys are doing this. You guys are doing this. Everyone get on board. Here we go. People with the genius of galvanizing can push people out of their comfort zone and get them rallied around an idea. And then next is enablement. And we normally think of enablement as a bad thing, but enablement in the working genius is a great thing. It's a little bit of the emotional intelligence of the process. They can see what's been galvanized. They can see what the directives are and can identify this might be a problem for these people, or these people might need more. And they're willing to step in and help on other people's terms. So they know how to help, when to help, who to help, and how to flex to make sure what needs to get done gets done. And then the sixth step is tenacity. And people with the working genius of tenacity love to complete a project. They love to get things done. A to-do list is their jam, or even just real detail-oriented people who are really into getting things done correctly the right way and checkmarking it off of their list. So let's give a real life example of how the working genius kind of plays out. In not a work example, but in a personal example. Let's talk about vacation. So you're just living your life, and let's say someone in your family who has the genius of wonder says, hey, do we need a vacation? It kind of seems like we might need a vacation, right? Did you see how they kind of stopped us in our tracks and wondered? And then invention says, oh, yes, we always need a vacation. Let's go to Maui. And then discernment comes back and says, ooh, Maui is kind of expensive, maybe, a little too late in the game planning wise to get our family to Maui. Let's go somewhere else. How about we go somewhere like, in the continental United States, maybe somewhere on the West Coast? Does that sound like it would be better in our budget? And invention comes back and says, oh, yes, okay, that's good. We can't afford it. It's going to take too much time. Now that we've discerned that, let's go to the magical land of Bend, Oregon. I happen to live in Bend, Oregon. It's a magical land. So great. That's what they have decided between invention and discernment. Well, then it gets passed on to galvanizing. And galvanizing says, everybody, get excited. We are going to Bend. What are you looking forward to the most? Right? Galvanizer kind of gets everyone rallied, gets everyone on board, thinking about their part in the project, their part in the vacation. Enablement says, I'm going to start doing some research because I think that it might be a little hard making sure that there are enough attractions and restaurants that we all want to do together. So I'm going to do some research to make sure we can give everybody a little bit of what they want on this trip. And then tenacity says, great, I'm booking the flights in the hotel tomorrow by noon. And there it is, just a picture of how the 6 steps work together. But that is just like a personal real life example. You can imagine this happens every single time anything gets done in your workplace. Any activity, project that happens, it involves those 6 steps. And perhaps the greatest impact of the working genius is it allows us to shed a lot of guilt and judgment that we have. It allows us to shed the guilt because once we kind of understand what our geniuses are and what we bring to the table, we don't have to feel so bad about the things that we struggle with. And I want to clarify that when you do this assessment and you see what your working geniuses are, it is a rating, not a ranking. So it doesn't mean that you're bad at your working frustrations. A lot of people have had to learn to get really good at their working frustrations, but the problem is it drains you. It totally wipes you out. And friend, I really do believe, as does the table group, that burnout isn't too much work, it's too much of the wrong work. And so if the majority of your job is spent doing work in your working frustration, it is a surefire way to burn out. If that's you, if you discover that you're in a role and you're frustrated or you're discouraged or you feel guilty because you don't enjoy the kind of work you're doing and you don't feel like you're thriving in it, then you can be released of that guilt and know it's not a you problem. It might just be that you are working in your wrong working genius. And the other beautiful thing is it helps us to shed judgment of others. And we judge others often through the fundamental attribution error. I talk about this a lot on the podcast. It's where we attribute someone's behavior to a character flaw. So we see someone cut us off in traffic and we assume that they're a jerk, right? Because we attributed the behavior we saw to their character. We didn't know their circumstance. We didn't know that they were on the way to the hospital because they had a family member in the hospital they had to get to quickly. We didn't have the information. All we had was our perception of the behavior. And so we attributed that behavior to their character. And we do this all the time. So when we understand not only our working genius, but our team's working genius, it changes everything. It is magic. I am a working genius coach, certified coach. And when I do this exercise with teams, when we look at the team map and we see where everyone lands, all the judgment just like comes right off because you can see why people work the way that they work. And it provides so much opportunity to help us understand how we judge others and to stop doing it. So another really awesome graphic that is in that PDF that I hope you download is the altitude of geniuses. So when you think about the 6 working geniuses and you think of wonder being at the top, like an airplane at 30,000 feet in the sky. And as you go down to each working genius, it gets lower and lower and lower until you're tenacity, which is like boots on the ground. Things are happening. It really helps you understand where the work falls in process and in order. And why this is so helpful is, have you ever been in a meeting where you are brainstorming something and it's that time to brainstorm and someone pops in and says, well, that will never work. We don't have the budget for that. And it just kills it. Or have you ever been in a meeting where you're planning the event that is happening that weekend and someone says, I have an idea. What if we did? And they start to share their wonder. And you're like, no. That was a 10 weeks ago, maybe even 10 months ago idea. There are no new ideas welcome here, right? So if you're in those meetings and you're really jumping altitudes, right? So you're at tenacity and then you're up to wonder and then there's a new idea, you're down to invention, you're going to get altitude sickness. It's turbulence. Just like when you're on an airplane. And that turbulence doesn't feel good. And your team has to recover from it, right? It sends you off course for a moment and you have to recover. So the working genius and specifically the altitude just gives us language. I've worked with a team once and they shared with me some of their emails on their next project after having done this. And they said, okay, this meeting is a tenacity meeting. So there are no wonders or inventions allowed. If you have those, write them down. We will review them later, but this meeting is only for tenacity. And what's great about that is everyone has the common language. So now when the people with wonder and invention show up, they're not offended when their ideas are rejected, or the person who's running the meeting, who may be a tenacity genius who has been given the task of completing the work, doesn't feel like a jerk when they have to say, no, that's not welcome here. So there is magic in understanding your own working genius. And there is massive magic, if that's a thing, in understanding your team's working genius as a whole. So personally, for me, in my work and in my personal life, I have discovered through the assessment that I am an IG. So my working genius is invention and galvanizing. I love having new ideas and then I love getting people excited about it. But there's a problem, and that is the second and the fourth working geniuses. There is one in the middle, the third one wedged in there, discernment. And not only is discernment not one of my working geniuses, it is one of my working frustrations. So I don't like it when I have an idea and I'm excited about it and someone stops to ask questions about it. And when I realized this, I just had so much insight about my leadership in my previous teams. I had people who I actually found out later had the gift, the genius of discernment. And so when they would come to me in a meeting and I would share my idea, ready to get everyone excited, hoping that people are meeting me with my galvanizing, right? With that energy, with that excitement, and they shoot a bunch of holes in it, I immediately think, I have no good ideas, or these people have fixed mindsets, or they're all no people. We're never going to make any progress here. Right? I would think all these things about myself, the guilt, and the judgment of others, when instead I could have recognized I need you. I need people with discernment because otherwise I'm going to jump into an idea with all the excitement in the world, only to find out that it wasn't the right idea too far down the road. And that would harm our team, harm our progress. We'd be surprised by failures because we didn't discern the ideas. This was a gift to me. Well, funny thing, you want to know who also has a working genius of discernment? My husband. And so for so long, I subconsciously thought that he didn't think I had good ideas because every time I had a good idea, he questioned it. Well, now that I know what I know, what do? Every time I have a new idea, I go to him and I ask him to discern it. And now we are a stronger couple for it. Our marriage is stronger for it. And our work is stronger for it. The work we do together is strong. It has been incredible. Now, when it comes to teams, this is awesome. I had a leader, I did this with her team, but before we did the assessments and the team mapping together, she came to me and she said, I'm so frustrated because here I am delegating work to these leaders underneath me, these 3 or 4 people that were right underneath her, she supervised. And every time there's a problem, they come to me looking for the answer. And I'm frustrated because I have given them the authority to have the answer and I can't come up with all their answers. And so this was a relational problem. And so we did their team map. And guess what? Out of the 4 of them, none of them had the working genius of invention. So once they were able to see that they struggled coming up with a solution to the problem, and they'd go to the leader, and the leader was frustrated because she gave them that responsibility because it was a frustration for her to come up with ideas and solutions to the problem. They just all saw each other on a level playing field. And what they saw is, we need to hire people with the genius of invention. Like, this is a major hole. And this is going to be a problem for our team. So they were able to get over the interpersonal stuff, right? That I wish they would do this. I wish she would do this. I wish he would do this. That was all gone now because they had this clarity. They could see what was happening and they had the language for it. And together they could see what they needed to move forward. And so now when they hire people, they are looking for people with the genius of invention. And I know what you might be thinking. It might be confusing because it was for me at first too, of like, well, some jobs are just these kinds of geniuses and some jobs aren't. So like the accountant can't make decisions over here and the HR person can't be finishing that person's task. And that's not what this is, right? Like everybody has a job role, but ultimately we are a team and we shouldn't be doing tasks that are primarily in our working frustration. So yeah, some teams have gotten this and said, wow, now that we know that our accountant is the one who has discernment, the only one. When we have an idea, even if they're not an expert in what we're talking about, we can go to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. Could you help provide some discernment? And guess what? That fuels that person. They are being utilized on the team for their working genius. And this is what we crave. We crave to be utilized for our working genius. You might not know that, but you do. And you're also crushed when what you naturally bring to the table isn't recognized. When we overlook a working genius, we are overlooking a person. So when teams understand what their working geniuses are as a group, where their big holes are, their big gaps, then they can rely on each other so much more. They are more connected. They are resourcing what each other brings. And as a team, they are accomplishing so much more and without unnecessary conflict. Are you convinced? It's awesome. So again, every job is a 6-letter job, meaning WIDGET. That stands for, that acronym is widget, and those are all the working geniuses. Every job is a 6-letter job, and every person is a 6-letter person. You have all of these in you. It's just what you naturally bring to the table. And friends, as leaders, as managers, we want to be resourcing what these people naturally bring to the table. If you have people that are primarily working in their working frustration, you are going to be frustrated because getting work out of them is going to be hard. Their attitude is going to suffer. They are going to feel feelings of guilt, and the rest of the team is going to feel feelings of judgment. This is the most freeing thing you can do, is to know your working genius and to help your team know theirs and put it all together in this beautiful picture. And if you choose to do this with your team, to learn more about working genius and apply it, or even just consider it more yourself, there isn't this huge follow-up process necessary. There is a shared language, and that is the greatest benefit. With all the teams that I've worked with to do this work, they walk away most grateful for the level set and then the shared language because they use it. It's a productivity tool. They apply it right away. So how can you learn more about Working Genius? I mean, it can go so far. You can apply it to how you run meetings, right? Like when you're doing those wonder meetings, when you're having those brainstorm meetings, the person who's leading it should have a wonder working genius. It doesn't have to be you. You don't have to run your meetings. Isn't that amazing? It can apply to how you hire people. You can analyze a past project and see what would have gone better if you would have used your people's working geniuses and apply that to future projects. There's so much benefit. And so there are a couple of different points of entry. You can just take the assessment. You can go to the Table Group, the Working Genius website. I will link it in the show notes, and you can take the assessment and it will tell you what your profile is. There is a Working Genius podcast, and they have tons of episodes that just talk about all the working geniuses and how it works and how it fits. They're great. They're like 10, 15-minute episodes. They're grab and go, perfect for that drive to work after you listen to the Culture Keepers podcast. And then finally, as a leader, if you would like an individual debrief, if you want to sit down with a certified working genius coach and learn more insights, get more insights and coaching about your profile, I happen to know a coach that could work with you. Or if you want your team to do this together and then do a team mapping and have a team debrief, that is also something that I do. And I will include it in the show notes below, how you can connect with me to do that work together. I would love to do that with you. Okay, friends, I'm going to close with an illustration. So my husband and I got married really young. We were 21 and 22, just out of college. And at that time, I didn't really understand much about wedding registries. I thought it was cool that people were going to buy us stuff, but I just didn't really understand that people like to buy you nice things. That's the point. And so I felt bad asking people to buy us nice things. So I registered for very little or things that weren't great quality. I fully regret that now. But something that I didn't register for were salad tongs. Not a big deal. Right? Whatever. You can use a fork and you can use a spoon, or you can use like whatever. There's so many different combinations of utensils that you can use that you already have that will do the job. But what's funny is people will come over and they'll be like, oh, do you have salad tongs for that? I'll be like, oh, no. Just use the fork and the spoon. And people are like, oh, okay. You could just like go even to like the dollar store and get a pair of salad tongs. And I'm like, oh, well, at this point, been married for 15 years. Like, what's the point, But the point is, it's not hard to get the right tool to do the right job. I wanted a fork and a spoon to be salad tongs. It works, but the fork and the spoon have their own jobs that they thrive in, that they excel in, that they were built for. You were built a certain way with certain geniuses, and you were meant to use them. And as leaders, we often want to make people that are forks and spoons salad tongs. And in the process, we burn them out. We're not even using what they were made to be used for. And so, friend, I want to encourage you to learn more about the working genius, not only for yourself and for your team as a whole, but to serve your individual team members well, to make sure they are not being crushed by their working geniuses not being utilized, that they aren't a fork or a spoon being made to be salad tongs. Maybe one of my best illustrations. Okay, friends, this was fun. Can you tell I love the working genius? I mean it when I say it's had the greatest impact of really any of these kinds of assessments. It's had the greatest impact on my career and in my personal life. And so I just want to encourage you to go for it and learn more about it. If it's just in the podcast, that's great. Taking the test, whatever it is that you do to learn more about it, it will only benefit you. I have all those links I shared down in the show notes. Go ahead and grab them. And friend, until next time, I'm cheering you on as always. Take care. Bye.